Hi, my name is Brandon, and I'm an alcoholic and addict in recovery. And like many of you, I told a lot of lies in my addiction. In fact, my addiction was built on a lie. As Tommy Rosen says in Recovery 2.0, the entire addiction story that we tell ourselves, why we drink or do drugs, why we engage in the behaviors we do, that whole story that we tell ourselves is one big lie. So one of the things we have to do in recovery is learn to start telling the truth and to learn how to be truthful, not only in our thoughts, but in our actions. And it's not as easy as it seems. And it's also not like flipping a switch. I can't tell you how many times I've found myself in this situation, and I've heard other people talk about it, where you're talking to someone, you're in recovery and you're talking to someone, and they ask you a question, and you, out of nowhere, a lie comes out of your mouth. Maybe they ask you something as simple as, have you seen this television show? And you haven't seen it, but you respond, yeah, I've seen it. I really liked it. And you find yourself kind of looking at yourself and saying, why did I do that? And you have to stop and say, wait a second, I actually haven't seen it. I don't know why I told you I did. Now, if you're having this conversation with another addict, they'll immediately laugh because they totally understand what's going on. Non-addicts might kind of look at you a little funny, but then move on with the conversation. But it's just because our brains are so conditioned to tell untruths and to be dishonest. So I want to read some of what Tommy Rosen has to say about truthfulness. And this is the part of the book where he's talking about the 5 restraints. He's getting into the moral and philosophical underpinnings of yoga and how they apply to his furthering of his spiritual foundation that he got from working the 12 steps. So this is about the restraint called Satya. Satya means truthfulness in word and thought. Everyone has told a lie at some point. As it turns out, addicts tell a whole lot of lies. They are attached to their addiction story, which is in itself untrue. Addicts need to be dishonest, so they develop the habit of being untruthful. One of the first lessons I learned at Hazelden was the importance of telling the truth, especially to myself. The ideal of rigorous honesty is one of the major tenets of 12-step programs. Again, while we may not have always been truthful in our lives, we can aspire to the ideal of Satya. Satya also extends to the idea of being free from illusion. So when I was in my addiction, I spent a lot of time telling lies, and it started very simply. I would say I didn't quite look at things in terms of telling lies. I looked at what I could get away with, and not necessarily just being out and out untruthful, but holding back on the entire story, or telling only the parts of the story that I wanted other people to hear. All of these things are aspects of dishonesty, and they're all the kinds of behaviors that have to go in recovery. In recovery, we have to be rigorously honest with ourselves and with the people around us in order to maintain the kind of spiritual foundation that we're really trying to maintain. It's really important that we not be attracted by ideas of looking at what we can get away with or trying to figure out what someone else needs to know. There are probably situations where we don't need to tell someone the entire truth or everything that's on our mind, especially early in recovery when the things that are on our mind probably are best not spoken out loud. And yet it is important that we have people that we can go to talk about those things. That's why in 12-step programs, the idea of a sponsor is so important. If I have certain thoughts about a spouse or about a child or a coworker that aren't thoughts that I think are appropriate to speak out loud, I need to be able to go and talk to a sponsor about those things. A spiritual guide who can help me make sense of those thoughts and understand why they're there and what I should be doing with them. And that in and of itself is bringing an aspect of truthfulness to life that we normally wouldn't have. Normally, we would stuff these thoughts away. We would either try to push them down and pretend they weren't there, or we would rationalize them. That's what I got really good at, was rationalizing the way that I felt. Instead of calling the way I felt into question, I would rationalize the way I felt that way, which in and of itself was a kind of dishonesty. And I would blame people for playing a part in my emotions that they really didn't play. I would be, and this is where step 4 in the 12 steps comes in very handy. In step 4, we really start to look at, how did I play a role in the resentments that I developed? And that's very different than what we used to do. What we used to do is look at the way everybody else made us feel. And now we take a look at, what role do I play in that? By doing that, we bring truth into the equation, because at the end of the day, someone outside of me can't really make me feel a certain way. It's my reaction to them that makes me feel a certain way. And by understanding that truth, we bring ourselves closer to healing. So truthfulness in recovery is one of the most important aspects, and it's something that we cover a lot in the 12 steps. Rigorous honesty in both thought and behavior and the way we treat others is a cornerstone in any strong program of recovery. That's it for today. I'll be back tomorrow with more. Have a good one.